Good evening, everyone from the British Film Designers Guild who has dialed in to watch this webinar on Dracula. And we are very grateful that we are joined by some of the art department. We are waiting for YouTube to come on, but I think it has now. So I'd like to say hello to everybody who has joined us on YouTube for this British Film Designers Guild Dracula forum that we are having this evening. I just want to say a few words about the British Film Designers Guild to those who don't know about it. It is a flourishing professional organisation of art department creators and production designers who span the various branches of the art department in film, television and commercials. Our membership, we are very lucky, comprised of over 650 accredited members, and they are some of the most experienced and talented in the industry. It formatted itself over 75 years ago. And the prime objective was to raise the profile of the art department and to promote and encourage excellence within it, as well as protecting the interests of its members. We nurture new talent and we love showcasing our members' work. Those core principles still apply today, and we're a thriving and evolving creative community. We welcome different backgrounds, cultures, and abilities, and we realize that diversity fuels creativity. We believe that our industry has the potential to thrive, innovate, and grow by embracing exciting new talent. We do have lots of benefits that we offer, and if you go onto our website, then you can see what all of those are. And we do it because we want to raise the profile of the art department within the film and television industry and promote best practice, as well as maintaining standards across the skill levels. That's enough about the British Film Designers Guild. I'm delighted this evening to be joined by Arwell Jones, who was the production designer on Dracula. Hello, Arwell.
Hello.
And we have Harry Troe, who is the supervising art director. Good evening, Harry.
Hello.
And we also have Laura Mayle, who was art director. Hello. How are you? And we also have Kaylee Powell, who is production buyer. And we have Richard Wells, the graphics designer.
Hello.
So nice of you all to join us. I think I wanted to start with you, Arwell, to talk to you about what was it like when you got the call and they said to you, we'd like you to come and design Dracula?
Well, it's quite a daunting task, isn't it? It's a great one, because who wouldn't want to do Dracula's castle? But it's also one of those things. There's been numerous iterations before, and everyone has a favourite. So you're really entering into the lion's den of everyone's tastes. So it was quite exciting, obviously, and a gift of a job to try and do. To do a Gothic castle, Dracula's castle is on everyone's list, I would imagine.
I can imagine. And also, I mean, I think one of the challenges, isn't it, is that there have been so many Dracula films before and television series and, some really quite memorable pieces. And so you often, I suppose, when you read it, you must in your head, I know I do, I'm like, how can I make this more exciting and different to the others, but yet still maintain the whole.
Well, this is it. There's a certain amount that you have to, it has to be a castle. You can't try and sell a bungalow. There's expectation, but there's always having looked at quite a lot of references and stuff. What always struck me, bar a couple of notable exceptions, when you see the great big castle on top of the hill from afar, it's always quite a striking image and quite a big imposing building. And then quite often, and I'm sure this is due to budgets back in the day, once you pass through that big daunting gate and into the castle itself, they tend to be slightly smaller spaces than you expect. So I really wanted to sell that idea of scale as soon as you entered the castle. So even though in the early drafts we had the hallway and the staircase in one space and the dining room as another, I kind of tried to sell the idea to Stephen and Mark, and they went with it, of combining them all into one space to give us that kind of bigger space and depth then when we were doing the various scenes in both places.
Yeah, well, it worked very well. And so, Harry, I'm going to go to you. So what was it like for you? I mean, it must have been quite challenging for you. You You built the sets on that set on the stage that we've just talked about, and that big staircase, and structurally making it, because there was a lot of, I remember watching it, there's a lot of toing and froing on that staircase and not having old staircase wobble, and quite a big set piece. So what was that like for you to get all of that together and draw it all up? And and you probably would have had Laura helping you, I'm sure, and many other people.
Yeah, and Rebecca, who's not on this stream as well, who helped did a lot of the drawings for that set. And we had a great construction team who they started before me, actually, and we're already putting the foundations in place for some of those designs. The staircase, still things to be sorted, but they started before me, and they did a huge job, an incredible job, really, in the studio there in Bray.
Yes, we talked, I think, about I just mentioned it, that Bray Studios was used, and I also believe that you went to Slovakia for some of the locations. So what was that like for you, going to Slovakia? I've always wanted to go. I'm sure it's amazing. So what was that like? Kaylee, did you I don't think you got to go, did you? We had a conversation earlier and I think you had to stay behind.
I did, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I'm guessing, with all the props and everything, you would have had to, did you have to send things out or were things sourced locally? How did that work for you with that, with coping with that?
We sent a truck over. Luckily, with the exteriors, there wasn't a huge amount of dressing, but we sent a lot of candelabras over. I think we sent quite a lot of construction elements over as well. But the things we did prop, we sent over, and then obviously there was a team out there who did little bits that were needed.
Yes, I suppose it's always a challenge, isn't it, Arwell, when you do a set of that size, and particularly with Dracula, obviously no daylight coming in, so you have to think about what happens with the window treatments.
Yes, exactly.
Lots of candles.
They were specific, and also to get something rather than just sticking a curtain on a window. The Sedec team spent quite a long time developing a style of dressing for these curtains, and then we sent Kaylee up in a cherry picker to deal with all the high windows in the hallway and block out. But of course, what that did as well, it blocked out all the lights. So therefore, we then had to put in a load of candles to help light the set. But it worked quite well, to the point where the lighting team used candles as well in hoppers. I've got an image I can show you quickly that shows how many candles were just in one hopper.
Goodness.
Which is quite nice, isn't it? So they were using them instead of lamps in certain parts, and then you can see the amount of. Yes. So we had quite a few, didn't we, Kaylee?
Yeah, I think we must have gone through about 3,000, but with them being double wickers, they just burn down so quickly, and especially in those round things that lighting team had offset, that was made of metal, so obviously it was intense and they were just melting. We had a little guy in Wales just squirreling away, just making candles. We'd literally ring him every day saying, we need more. Like, our petty cash buyer was driving up and down to pick them up. It was crazy.
You have a very big fire truck outside with a nice fireman in a nice outfit waiting.
I wish.
Yeah, candlelight is special, isn't it? I think that, Arwell, I'm sure, and with Harry, that you had to do lots of samples, paint samples, because, to sort of test it out and see what was going to happen with the lighting. And, it's always a challenge, isn't it, with that? And you worry about the DOP. Are they going to do they want the ceiling off? Are they going to start putting loads of light in from the ceiling? And you don't want that, do you?
No, but we had some quite elaborate setups from the rigging guys, because even over the top of the dining table, we had the full ceiling in there, but there was 3 separate hinged sections that could be opened up in order for them to bring in the soft light above. But to be honest, they used so much of the candlelight, and the cameras these days are so good that Tony Slater-Ling, the DOP, did a wonderful job. He every frame he set up was beautiful, I have to say.
Yeah, and a lot of all the paint finishes were really great. So did you, was there a lot of testing with that? Did you go to Slovakia, go, okay, this is the outside, this is what I'm going to do?
Weirdly, it was the other way. It was a little bit of the tail wagging the dog, because we'd had to start the design process, and we'd done a lot of, like you say, test pieces on some boards of different textures and paint colors and finishes. So by the time we got and picked the castle, it was lucky, it tied in quite nicely. So there was only a bit of tweaking that we had to do. But also, because we had the convent exterior, and that was also out in Slovakia, and a lot of these castles and that kind of feel have all got this plastered finish out in Eastern Europe. So I wanted the interior to be very definitely, you were either in the convent or the castle. So we deliberately did some pieces that transitioned from the plaster into rougher rock and stone, so that whenever you were in the castle, you felt it was that stone rough texture, and we kept the kind of more dirty plaster for the convent.
And did you, on the inside, Richard, we're going to get to Richard in a moment and talk about graphics. I'm sorry, Richard, we're not ignoring you. I just was interested because there were, obviously there's lots of bits that you need when you're filming larger sections, and then you might need a bit of corridor and that kind of thing. So did you use any locations inside when you were shooting the interior, or did you build the entire of the interior?
We built most of it. We did, weirdly, there was an area inside the castle that we used for a bit of the convent, and we used a bit of the convent for a bit of the castle, just as a bit of a stairwell.
Yeah.
But most, because they lent to each other to that a bit better.
Yes.
But most of the corridors, the little behind the scenes bits, the shortcuts, the secret passageways, everything we actually built into the set, around the set. So you could go and wander around at the top, go up the stairs to the top, and wander right the way through all these corridors and back down the other end at the dining table. So it worked quite well.
Yeah, for the flow.
One set of corridors that we did use in where were they, Rich? You told us about them, didn't you?
The Hellfire Caves?
The Hellfire Caves, yeah. One of Harry's favourite.
West Wickham House.
Yeah. Harry went and set up there on his own. He really liked that.
We used that for the kind of crypt at the bottom where the bodies get stored in the wooden boxes. And on the day we were dressing that, the props guys who were with me, the dressing teams, took their stuff back up and left me there alone. And I had a look around, took some pictures, and then started walking out. And I got a bit. I dropped my drill, and I decided I couldn't go back for it by myself. I just had to get out of there because I was getting too scared. So I went back out. I know what it's. Prop guys back.
I know what it's like. For those of you who are listening, West Wickham House has a set of caves, and they are called the Hellfire Caves, and they were used not by Dracula or for anything like that. They were actually used by the gentleman who lived in West Wickham House, and he built them for, shall we say, parties is probably the best words to use. And they are quite scary, really, but they're quite amazing. I mean, and they're great, aren't they? Because they're so close to London, and you'd never know it. And it's quite strange because on the top of that hill there's a church. And I always find that quite ironic because it was definitely what he was up to was definitely not what he'd do in a church. So Richard, let's talk a little bit about graphics, because there will be people watching who are very interested in graphic design. And I myself, I do love graphics. I love all the writing, and there are so many things that you can do with graphics. Do you want to talk a little bit about the kind of challenges that you had with Dracula and things that you brought, that we haven't seen before, maybe in a Dracula, that you brought to the table?
Well, the first thing I needed to do was design the crest. We had a crest for Dracula, so that's where I started. And Arwell had an idea that maybe the design of the set somehow feeds into the design of the crest. So we had this grand circular staircase. And so we tried to tie that into the design of the crest. So we had a dragon as the main figure, because Dracula translates as son of the dragon, so we knew we wanted that as the main focal point. And then we had the tail of the dragon curved round, and the curve matches the curve of the staircase. I mean, you wouldn't really notice that; it's just a subtle hint, but it's.
Those are very lovely. Did you draw those, Richard?
Yes. Oh, we're skipping through. Yeah, there's the crest there, and oh yeah, that's showing where the scene where Jonathan finds the secret maps to the castle.
Oh, right, yes.
So I had an idea that, because it's scripted, that he joins the maps together and finds out the way to escape the castle, basically. So I had an idea that when the maps join together, it roughly forms the shape of the crest. You can see that there.
Very nice.
So yeah, then and Johnny Campbell, the director, decided he wanted the map split into 13 separate chunks. So I had to start out designing the whole plan of the space and then split that into 13 different sections and then create a separate map for each of those sections. So that was the biggest challenge on the job, I think, because that took a long time. But I was quite lucky that we got quite a generous prep time on this. So it was,
and do you like to do a lot of the, I mean, I can see here there's some lovely drawing. Do you do that drawing yourself, or do you get somebody to come and do that for you?
No, I like to, yeah, I love all that stuff. Big fan of all the period detail and the mad scribblings and things like that. So yeah, I did everything.
That's all Richard's work as well.
And and working out what his handwriting's like.
Yes, yeah, I've done a lot of dip pen writing. I've done like Paul Dark and things in the past, so I've did like a self-taught.
I love that. Beautiful. Were the banners? Did you have those embroidered, or was that? How did you?
Yeah, we printed them onto different stocks of fabric, and then we had our assistant Indigo. She embroidered sections onto them and distressed them, and that. So it was like a combination of printing and then textures on top of that.
Yes.
Well.
Very nice.
What was very clever as well, what he did was, so he came up with that original crest, our first crest, but then for those battle banners, he regressed the design back as if they were like a couple of centuries before for each banner, just to show that he'd been around as this warlord for quite a long time. So just show you that briefly again, so you can see that every banner as you go from right to left is slightly aged in style.
Yeah, I kind of like worked backwards through the centuries, doing some research on different battle banners and pennant flags from the different periods. So I just tried to basically deconstruct the crest, working backwards, basically, and different designs for that.
They're lovely. We've had a question in. I was going to just ask you, and it doesn't matter who answers it. It's basically about design, Arwell, but lots of people contribute to the design, don't they, on a show? And it says, hello everyone. I hope you're doing well. During the design process, did you consider the production's sustainability within its design? And if so, what did you do?
Sustainability to start with is difficult, because when you're building from scratch, it's generally new stuff. But as we got into the show, we were reusing as much as possible, not just because of sustainability, but also for speed and budgetary reasons. You know, so we do tend to try and reuse and repurpose as much as possible as we go through.
Yes, BAFTA they've started to have something called Albert, and it's just been going for about 10 years. And on the show that I'm on at the moment, we were going to do it, but it has got quite stringent. There's quite a stringent set of rules attached to it, and it makes it difficult if you have anybody that's coming from abroad, or you have to bring anything from abroad. It makes it quite hard. But I think Kayla Pratt, I hope I've said your name correctly. I hope that answers your question. And Kayla, it is just on a general note, we all do try to care about sustainability when we're building a set. And I know, I mean, I can't speak for the people in front of me, but I know we try very hard to sell or recycle a lot of the flattage that we do, because, for example, Arwell will have done some lovely windows, or there could be something, and that you never know whether that's something that could be used for someone else on another production. They paint it completely differently. So, you know, that is a consideration, isn't it, Arwell? And I think, Harry, you probably agree with me that we do try flooring, you know, that all that kind of thing. It's not easy, and you're often at the mercy, aren't you, of the production, because they're going, can you hurry up? Can you hurry up?
That's one of the main difficulties, really, is time, you know, and also storage is so expensive these days. I've salvaged as much as possible that I can fit in my own storage, which is probably more than I should have, but you know, yeah.
There's always someone doing some home improvements as well, who, if we don't get to reuse it or recycle it, then they nick it to build their own shed or things like that.
Yes, yes, of course.
Even at the lowest.
They're giving it, Harry. They don't nick it. They are giving it, aren't they?
It's a nice shed that Arwell's got, isn't it?
Yes.
So yeah, you've got a very nice shed. It's nice, your shed, Arwell.
Thank you. It's what kept me sane during the lockdown.
I have a nice shed in my garden too, Arwell, from something. Laura, I was going to ask you, somebody has actually written in and asked, which I think is quite sweet. Stephanie, she says, and I just wondered if, I'm asking you because we've been talking a lot about graphics and design, but when you've worked on a show like this and you walk onto the set and you see your work and other people's work finished, is that a sort of, how do you feel? Do you get emotional about that? What's it like? And then when you watch it on the television screen, how is that for you and how do you feel?
I mean, yeah, like we go through so many stages of the building process and the design process, and particularly with like Dracula's castle in this instant, you're watching all these different layers, going through different painting, and once it's dressed, and we would walk around the castle through all the corridors, like Arwell said, it just flowed so nicely. But we were using like our torches on our phone in like the darker areas, and as soon as like the first day when we got all the candles on and it was properly lit for filming, it does just feel so magical. It's like a transformation because it's just ready, and that definitely does make you, I guess it does make you feel a bit emotional because you see all of your hard work and it's like worth it. So yeah, definitely. And then again on screen, like seeing that translate on screen as part of the story, it is really magical.
Yes, yeah. And especially when someone in production says thank you, right, Arwell?
Yes. Which I have to say, I have to give Hatcher their dues here. They are very, very grateful and always very good to us about the builds. And they do give me a lot of leeway in comparison and tend to trust me maybe more than they should.
Well, I think trust is quite, you trust your team that you have with you, don't you? And, and they all did a wonderful job for you. I think what's interesting in this one is what was the, Anna Cowley has asked, and it was a question I was going to ask, which was there any consideration towards the fact that it was going to be a more modern version of Dracula when you were designing the sets and earlier parts of the show? Because there was that sort of whole transition of, you jumped, didn't you? So yeah,
no, that was more kind of retrospective, because we treated them really, because they were 3 90-minute episodes, we treated them like 3 separate films in a way, because they were such separate stories, but then had the elements that kind of flowed through all 3. So it was more that we, in episode 3, had references back to the castle and the dressing of the castle and stuff in his apartment and in the Harker Institute, out of all of them, I suppose, because we were in the backstory saying that was set up at the end of the 19th century, so that there was elements of that were proper Victorian technology, but it had everything right up to modern LED lighting in there, so it kept being updated. So that was our kind of physical rendition of the story, if you like, of the transition from Victorian era right up to the modern day.
Yeah, and there's always challenges. There are always challenges of jumping forward. There's always challenges with that, aren't there?
Yeah.
And you don't want that. You need, I mean, the flow worked terribly well, that whole kind of thing, because you want to keep the story going. You need to keep the threads going. You need to. So did you, I don't know. I mean, I don't know, Richard, with the graphics, how did that, was there anything that you could share, or something that you can, remember or about? Was there any thread that you pulled through? We talked about your lovely map that you made in all those sections and all those beautiful banners, and I'm sure many other things. So yes, obviously maybe his writing and his actual style of writing, but was there anything that you did that you thought, oh, I'm going to pull that through from this era to this era?
Not really, no. There weren't many opportunities for that in episode 3 for me. But my main task in Ep 3 was, obviously going into the modern day, it was a lot of more screen graphics for me in episode 3. So there's lots of phones and texting and that. And in the edit, Paul did his thing he pioneered on Sherlock with the text popping up above the phone, but he hadn't decided if he wanted to do that when we were shooting, so I had to make every screen interactive and work as is, kind of, for the actors to interact with. That was my main task in episode 3, so there wasn't really much opportunity for bringing things back from the previous episodes.
We did it more with the couple of the scenic artists we had, really talented guys, and very good portrait artists, so that we had some portraits, various ones throughout the series really, and those we had some elements of those in the corridor in episode 3, and also in Dracula's apartment. Some of the artwork on the walls were done by them, just to reference and kind of just hint back to the style that we had in the castle and stuff, you know.
Yes. So I mean, I think it's interesting for people to know, you know, and there will be people who are watching who are just starting out in the industry, and it's quite a fascinating thing to know that Richard goes from getting his pencil out, like many of us do, getting his pencil out, and then all of a sudden he finds himself on a computer, and it's in the same show, which to be honest doesn't happen all the time. If you're doing something very early, you know, then most of it is done by hand, doing something 11th century or whatever it is you're doing, isn't it? That's the case. And then,
very enjoyable mix for me to do a bit of both.
But it is handy now and again to have the computer, isn't it, to speed things up, to help you.
Oh yeah,
there's a sort of great volume that you have to get through. I think that's interesting. Harry, I was going to talk a little bit, and maybe Laura, you might want to talk about it, and even Kaylee, about the ship. So you know, you had a ship build to do. What were the challenges of that? How did you find that?
I think it was building that ship was a lot of our favorite time, but also one of the most stressful times, because at least when we started the job and for the most of prep, that ship was going to be a location, and then it changed to be a build. The whole thing, I think we were always going to build the inside, the cabins and the dining room and things like that, but it's the deck, the whole exterior turned into a build. So it was that the time was a challenge, although I think we pulled it off. And I remember going around to all the different departments and asking how much they thought they needed, and it came to something like 3 months, but we only had a matter of weeks, so that wasn't going to work. But we you know, with people working together and things being made offsite and brought in, it worked out in the end.
Yeah. Was it based on any particular boat that exists, or did you just have to make it from, you know, looking perhaps at reference pictures, or
we had to make it up, because one of the references the producers and the writers had was that essentially this episode was like Alien on a boat. And when we went and recce'd a couple of real boats, you know, I could see the fear on their eyes when they realized it was too small to actually be able to sell the idea. So it was really a case of it being bigger on the inside, similar to something else we've done. So even though the scale of the outside of the boat, the hull and the deck, actually we had to build it in that image. You can see it was diagonally. It had to go diagonal corner to corner in the studio, and then we had to trim a bit off. But even after that, for all the bits inside the corridor and the cabins that we built, were actually the cabins were bigger than could actually physically fit inside that scale again, you know, in order to just have a workable space and believe that someone could be hiding in that space.
Yes. I think I've just had to go on a lot of boats recently myself, and I think it's quite interesting when you take people onto a boat, because they imagine like ships' cabins being like quite big, and they imagine it's all this big space, and it so is not. And you know, you get often asked, I know sometimes the producers say, why can't we shoot on a real boat? And so it's just like, well, because I don't think we'll probably get 2 people in the cabin and not much else.
Yeah. So the cabin that we had, there's an image of the cabin here.
Yeah.
So to have what we did, we built 2 of them and built them on wheels, so that they actually overlapped the section. So behind door 5 there would be a cabin that went all the way to the left of the second light. And then what we would do is we would roll it across to be behind door 4 and redress it to be cabin for door 4. Yeah. This is where Laura and Harry were really pulling their hair out and very, very busy with talking to Mark, the first AD, and to everyone else in regards to scheduling and what could go where
must have
and
been,
what point.
Yes. Yeah, scheduling all of that movement, very tricky, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, and as you know, in this part of the story was where we had the most guest actors, and they're never available all of the time. So the actual the intricacies of being able to work around everything was quite interesting.
Yes.
But, the team were great.
Just for those of you watching, the reason that often that happens where they had to put cabin on wheels is because there wouldn't necessarily always have been the budget to build 2 separate rooms. Also, sometimes not the space. So that was actually a very clever usage of making a set work. And it's the same with quite often with corridors and lots of other things that you have to reuse them, dress them, redress them. You might have to take a bedroom, redress the bedroom for another room, because quite often that happens. And especially now, I think we all know studio space is at a premium, isn't it? It's very difficult. And I think that you had to build, didn't you have to build an extra studio?
Well, that was a great segue. Well done. This is
did you like that?
Oh, look.
Was that smooth? Oh, well.
That was very smooth. Yeah. This is so we had to, for the hold, more than anything, space, but also we knew that we had to get a load of seawater coming into this area. So we had to build an extra stage, makeshift stage out in the car park, as you can see the daylight there above it, and then build into that space, dress it, and then flood it.
Yeah, it's great.
So that in itself brought its own little issues, because of course we were out in all weather trying to do that as well.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's a great period to do, isn't it? So, and Kaylee, I'm sure you probably found it very interesting, working in the set decorating department, going from one period to another. And do you have a particular period that, is, something you like, or were you delighted when you got the call and you thought, oh yes, I love a bit of Dracula?
Oh yeah, I love anything period. So that's always my dream, to do period stuff, whether it's Victorian or even early like 70s, whatever. I just enjoy doing that more than contemporary. You just get you just get a feel of what the story is a bit more, I think. And but yeah, it was good. Going from the castle was very different, and then propping the ship was different. We went to like marine places. Had to get nautical props. We had to get props that like swung to give you the sense of movement on the ship. The lights, that was always quite a difficult thing, because obviously they're meant to pivot with the movement of the ship because they were oil or candles. So again, finding runs of them and as well is quite tricky.
Yes. Not easy.
Yeah, and then transitioning into a modern day, like you just getting your head out of those spaces and then having to be like, right, it's the same story, but we're in a completely different world now. But yeah, it was nice because you could do, there was parts of like EP3 where there was like transitions from the period sets into the modern sets. So it was always good you was always doing a little bit of both.
Yes. And Harry, I'm guessing that it's a challenge, isn't it? It's quite different when you're doing modern day and, or if you're having to go to locations and then suddenly you find yourself doing a great set build, having to build a new stage to fill it. Doing a boat that's going to be flooded, but you're out in a car park. It's quite a challenge, isn't it, to do that?
Yeah, we had Bray at that time had 2 big studios, which nothing was ever idle. It was always being built, being filmed on, or being taken down, ready for the next one. And it had another little studio, and then we built that rig at the back for the water. So yeah, studio space was an issue. We filmed at Leavesden for a bit of EP3 as well, because we just we just needed more space.
Yes. And where did you go? Because you had some underwater scenes that you did, Harry. So where did you go and where did you shoot those?
Gosh, I can't remember the name now. Yeah,
Was
sorry,
it in England?
it was in England. Yeah,
Was it in England?
It was about an hour away from the studios, but I can't remember the name of it. So yeah, a tank there. That was
It's quite a challenge though. Tanks are interesting, aren't they? I think it might be interesting if you talk a little bit about the challenges of a tank, particularly if you're putting a set inside a tank.
Yeah,
well, it
was actually the first time I'd worked with any underwater stuff before filming, and it scared me completely, more than the Hellfire Caves. And yeah, all sorts of things came out of testing stuff there, where paint bleaches when it's in a chlorine water. So you start with one color and it fades after about an hour. So you have to find the right kind of paints and materials to work with that. And then because it was meant to be the sea instead of a pristine pool, there was a lot of milk and broccoli bought, and the broccoli churned up to be little bits of
flotsam and jetsam.
Algae, yeah.
I love that word, flotsam and jetsam. I'm sure it's completely irrelevant. It's got nothing to do with what you're talking about.
Harry,
but everyone always says it, don't they? Go, oh, you want some flotsam and jetsam? And I'm like, I have no idea. Jetsam. Who made up that? Where'd that come from? We've had a few questions. I'm just going to go through a couple of them because I think it would be nice to, maybe we can answer them. So, Stephanie, I think I asked the question to Kaylee about her favorite period. So I'm hoping that maybe all of you, I don't know, I'm sure you probably loved this period, and probably you loved doing period films and television. I'm sure it seems so. It's always so much more exciting, isn't it? And a bit more challenging than present day, when you don't have to struggle so much finding a prop or something. You can just cover yourself.
Yeah. Anything without computer screens is a dream for me. No phones and no tablets, no computers. I love all that. So all the practical hands-on documents. Good news. Yeah.
And Rebecca Smith, hello Rebecca, if you're watching. Rebecca is asking, she wondered how long did it take from initial designs to watching it on the big screen? I think this is always a question that people like to know. And I think maybe we'll talk about yours, because I think you did all of this pre-COVID, and obviously anything we talk about when the lovely COVID started, obviously that kind of is not, we all know that took everything out of normality. So if you could just maybe just briefly say, about the prep time, the shoot time, and then when it went live.
Yeah, well, I had some early prep with the drafts people that with two different drafts with Rebecca, then finished it off to just try and get some designs up and early. So I'd started in I think just over 3 years ago, October 3 years ago, and then by the time we were starting to build early January, to film then kind of late February, and then it actually went to air on the 1st of January the following year. So, it was essentially from when I first started, it was about 15 months.
It always takes longer, doesn't it? Television is always longer, especially if you have to do, sometimes in television, we have what are called blocks.
Yeah.
And you won't just have one director, you'll have several.
Yeah.
And you may have to go to a location, leave that, then go back again, and then go back. And
luckily we only had to do that once, because they were quite separate stories, but they were essentially, because they were 90-minute episodes, they were like 3 little feature films, and two a period. One was in a castle, one was on a boat, and then a modern day one with an underground lair and a high-end apartment. So they had their own little foibles.
Yes. Elwira, I'm just going to quickly answer you that the candles, they use double wicks a lot of the time. We did a whole little chat at the beginning, you might have missed it, about how the set was lit with thousands of candles, and they made special little lights that they put candles inside. That's how they do it, to get that wonderful effect, and the colors on the walls and the reflections. So Peter Harris is asking, what was your favorite practical effect used on the set? And I'm going to ask Laura that question.
Practical effect. I mean, with the hold that we showed in the extra studio that we built outside with the flooding. I mean, the impact of that and being able to just flood the whole space, and with it being outside, I mean, that was incredible to watch. Amazing. And translated really well on screen as well. So I think that was a really good one.
I didn't work on the show, but I'm going to add to that my favorite practical effect used on set was Harry's head sticking up out of the floor.
All right, you put me. I got to find that.
Yeah, there was a great shot that Arwell shared with us before, and it was Harry sticking his head up, pretending. What were you pretending to be? You were pretending to be.
That's it was one of the first things we filmed actually back at the studios.
Oh, there he is.
Which is where we built the entranceway, copied what was in Banska in Slovakia from our location, and so that there was a pit just under those gates, which Clays, who was playing Dracula, could get into and squeeze through this dog prosthetic, this special effect, which the LCs, the SFX team, had put a nice gruesome rubber kind of thing to push through. So that was one of our first effects that we saw actually.
Yeah, that I like that. I did like that picture. But also, Laura, I think it's very interesting, you know, when you do big flooding and things like that, it's quite something to see. If you've never seen it before, and then suddenly these tip tanks come and they chuck all this water on, it's really quite dramatic when it happens, and quite exciting if you've never seen it before. I wanted, there was Arwell, I do want you to explain who Bob was to the people watching.
Bob was in the fridge.
Yeah, Bob was in the fridge. You love this, don't you? Is this your favorite bit?
It was one of my favorite bits, I think, between everything. We had to there was a description during a conversation between Dracula and the lady of the house, and she asked, "Well, where's Bob?" And his line was just literally, "Bob's in the fridge." And then we see that the fridge is actually tied up in the kitchen with Bob inside it, all twisted and mangled. But obviously, we had to work out whether we could fit someone in a fridge. So Kaylee had to buy various fridges. And we found out that it was relatively easy to fit people into fridges, and we had to buy. How many did you buy? Get through in the end, Kaylee, before we got one that actually looked like it was difficult and a bit folding had to happen.
Probably about 8 or 9.
Yes.
So I'd like to say to you, Kaylee, because someone's asked the question, what's the biggest thing you took away from this job? So is it what size fridge you need to get for Bob?
Yeah, always probably triple, quadruple the amount of candles you think you need.
And get as many candles as you can. Yes, you can never have enough candles.
There's the fridge just in foreground there.
Look,
but also,
there it is.
Yeah, but also just the usual thing with scheduling is that we had to do this scene with the ceiling having come down on the Friday, and on the Monday we had to do that scene with
Right. So that was excellent scheduling that went on there.
That was availabilities again of people and stuff, which I'm sure you've come across a lot yourself.
Yes. So what happens, just to explain to people watching sometimes, is we in the art department, we often are considered last, because the actors there'll be an availability for an actor, or that could be a location availability, or it could be anything. And then we are asked to just sort it out. And
we're the problem-solving department, aren't we? Really, that's it.
We are the problem-solving department, and that's why, of course, sensibly, you would make a lovely set and then you would trash it. But no, and sometimes you get where they're saying, "Oh yes, we're going to burn the set." "Oh well, when are we going to do that?" "Oh, we'll burn it first, and then we're going to have it so it's really nice." Okay, right. That makes sense. "Oh yeah, that's because we want this actor and they're only available on a Saturday." And so you do have to deal with that. And I think, Stephanie, a question you've asked about dealing with last minute changes, that is exactly what you have to do. And yes, it can be quite stressful. And I think maybe if we just talk a little bit, Richard as well, this might be a good question for you, is that sometimes you get last minute changes. And I know, you might have spent ages writing a letter, or you could have by hand, or you could have done a map, or you could have done something, and then a script will come in, a last minute moment on the script, not necessarily on this job in particular perhaps, but maybe on another job, and suddenly all that loveliness that you've done, there'll be some line change that's happened because a writer has decided they don't like the line that they gave everybody on the script that's not the script. We can talk about that later, about the script. It's not the script, it's the script, it's not the script. So I just wondered, Richard, was there anything on this, or has there been anything in anything you've worked on where you've had that problem?
Not so much on this. I mean, the section where we had Jonathan Harker's pages and pages of writing scribblings where he's gone mad and he's written Dracula is God over and over again. I didn't have so much time to do that. So that was something where I had to combine digital and practical. So I wrote out so many lines and then scanned them all in and then separated each line. And then I could digitally make new pages quite quickly. So I could then churn out an amount of pages by, just by scanning them in essentially. So I didn't have to physically write out every single page. So that was a bit of a time saving thing there. So.
And I also know, Kaylee, that for you, you get this last minute request for a prop because someone's seen something at a party and they go, oh, it's a really great idea. It may not have happened to you, of course, on Dracula, but it is quite a common thing for a director to go, oh, Kaylee, do you think you could get me this? And it's something they've seen and it's in America.
And you're like, thing that you've either seen loads of times before and then you can't find it again, or it's impossible to ship over. Luckily with Period, like if you say it's not available, then they tend to be more lenient because it's Period and it's harder to get those stuff.
Yes.
There wasn't so much of that on this one.
No. No, but when it happens, it's quite funny, isn't it? And then it's phoning everybody going, have you got one?
Yes, like you ask the silliest questions to people. It's like,
and it's usually on a Sunday night and it's needed by the following morning. And you're like, oh yeah, I'll just go to that shop that's open at 8 o'clock at night and go and get it.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. So I think there were a couple of things that that I just obviously had to ask you, like world record.
Yes. Now, this was one of Harry's favourite moments on the whole show. When I had to leave what was quite a stressful build process and time at the studios to go and recce, I can't remember, it must have been at least a dozen different beaches all around the UK. And right at the 11th hour, Paul McGuigan, the director, went, well, on one of my last jobs, we built a beach in a studio, and we had the world record for the largest rear projection screen. Why don't we do that? And this was, we literally were like a couple of weeks out from shooting the scene. So we contacted the rear projection guy and we got his screen out, and it wasn't big enough. So we had to get a bigger one made. So even though we never had it officially ratified, it
was the biggest.
We know that it was bigger than the one that's in the Guinness Book of World Records.
Wow.
And
that is a big screen then.
Yes, but you can see there, that's the beach and that's the screen.
Yeah, amazing.
I think I've got a wide of the. Doesn't actually sell how big that screen was, but that's a studio in Leavesden, which Harry was talking about earlier. Which are quite big spaces, and the screen went all the way across. And when I say we, I mean Harry and Laura pretty much dealt with that whole beach themselves, with a little bit of help from their friends.
And that must have been quite a cool thing to do, I can imagine.
Cool and stressful.
Yeah.
No, it was good in the end.
Yeah. That's what makes it so exciting, though, doesn't it? The job, Harry.
Yeah. One thing that we did with the beach was we copied, because it's meant to be Whitby Bay, and so the sand I only saw pictures. I didn't get to go on the beach recce's and have ice creams, but Arwell sent me pictures of the sand where from the sea, it starts off as sand and then quickly becomes pebbles. And obviously we need to shoot both ways because we need to get Dracula's face and we need to get Dolly's face the other way. So we need the sand and the pebbles to switch places. And so as they finished filming at 7 o'clock at night, me and Laura and Darwell, actually, he did come that time.
You did come that time, Arwell.
Swapped that sand and the pebbles around so that the next day the sand would be closer to the screen to be able to film it as we needed to.
Yeah. It's quite amazing the tricks that you have to do, isn't it? But I'm sure it was quite a hard slog moving all those pebbles.
Well, it was, yeah.
I can't imagine that was fun.
We did have some help from some plant.
Didn't do it by hand.
With one of these little things, or a couple. We had a couple of those little things going around. But it was, it's that usual thing like you were talking about before. It was easier for us to move the beach than it was to move the rear projection screen.
Yes, yeah, I'm sure. So Richard, just a few last things because we're going to be winding up soon. Richard, what was your favourite part, do you think, of the job?
My favourite part was getting to go to Slovakia. It's quite rare that the graphics person gets to go out to location and usually chained to the desk. So it was really good to get to go out there, and I'm a huge horror nerd.
There's a reason. Yeah, go on, tell
everyone.
Yeah,
well, I well knew that I'm a massive horror nerd. So, and when I found out we were filming at Castle Orava, that was a big deal for me. That's where Nosferatu was filmed in 1922. They used that as the main location for Dracula's castle in that. So I was very keen to get out there.
That is a very scary film.
It is. It's brilliant.
It still scares me.
It's really iconic.
It's scary.
Yeah. So it was just a thrill to get out there and see the location.
We did have quite a lot of fun one lunchtime, didn't we, Rich? We recreated a few screen grabs from the original film.
Yeah. Stood in the actual spot where the actors were stood in 1922. So that was
I'm guessing, Arwell, that you didn't use the Young Frankenstein then as your reference.
No, I didn't. No, not. That'll be for a different time.
Kaylee, what for you? What have you come away with? What was your exciting something that you learned maybe, or an experience you had, or someone you met who'd made something for you?
I'd say one of the best, Harry will probably say this is his as well, but one of the best times that we had on the job was when we was building, the boat was just finished and there was a lot of last minute stuff because of the schedule was so tight. We all was working crazy hours that day, but we all just clubbed together, and it went from being this empty boat to just being completely dressed in the space of less than a day, because we got access to it later in the day, and we just worked late.
Yes,
one big team, last push, and then in the morning we were filming it. And we was learning how to do knots with the riggers. We had a rigging team who were they nautical riggers?
Yes, it was Dahi from Charlestown Harbour. They came and did rigging for us. Yeah, they were great.
Yeah, so they were teaching us stuff, and
Did you learn how to splice a rope, Kaylee?
I can't remember now. I was sure, but I can't remember now. But
good to learn. It's good to learn knots and things like that, isn't it? Because it's not something that you necessarily do all the time, unless of course you're in the Girl Guides or the Scouts, maybe when you were younger. But it's amazing because it is a very useful tool, isn't it? It's something great to learn and to understand. And I always used to find it fascinating watching the riggers when they would loop a rope back round, they'd splice it in, and then they'd hang some massive thing off of it. And I was like, you just literally wove that together like braiding, and why isn't it coming undone? And I remember when you see that, it's so clever because it's so simple, but it's really quite amazing. And all the rigging on the boats must have been quite interesting to see.
You can see how much work they did in that short time.
Yeah, I love rigging on boats.
In the dark when things are moving. Dahi and his team really did get all of that rigging working off the masts, and none of that was TV magic. It was all Dahi's team getting that working.
And Harry, what about you? Which was your favourite bit?
Well, that was also my favourite, and I think I remember just after that walking down the deck of the ship. And I think as a kid, I was always a big pirate fan. So just being on a ship of that style was quite just had to take a little moment for that.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. It probably seems like such a long time ago that you all were together doing it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It seems like it sometimes feels like another life. You're like, did I do that? And then when you watch it again, it must be, particularly, I think, with all the work that you did, it must be quite exciting, if you do catch it or decide to watch a little bit of it again, and you look at it and go, oh, I did that. And and it was a terrific show, and it was very well received. And I think, is there anything, because we're going to be winding up very shortly, is there anything that you particularly about it that we talked about earlier on about how delighted you were that you were actually asked to do it. And I'm sure, most people, it'd be like a dream to get Dracula, to do it. And, what was it like for you? What's it like for you going on to another job?
Well, I've been quite lucky, really. Most jobs we've been going on to have been quite nice, Can I just go back to your previous question about my favorite?
Your favorite. You can tell me your
favorite. Can I?
Thing.
It's all right. Okay.
Yes.
Was taking people onto
the fridge, but you can.
Yeah. Well, my second favorite then was taking people that have been around in this industry for quite some time onto that castle set and seeing their reaction, which was quite nice, to see some hard-nosed riggers and sparks kind of really have their get speechless.
I'm sure you were very proud, and you should have been, because it was a great
it was a real culmination of a team effort. Every single member of that art department had some involvement in some part of that castle.
Yeah, and just for all of you watching, just so that you know, that Dracula did win one of the awards from the British Film Designers Guild, and I had the great pleasure of introducing it. And the award was handed over by Sally Debonair, who we're very lucky sits on our board with us. So we're very lucky, and yes, and it deservedly won in its category.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing what you're all going to come up with you next. There have been a lot of questions asked this evening, and we unfortunately won't be able to get to all of them. But there is one, there's some people who have been asking about how you get a foot in the door and how you all got to know each other. And I think, just to wind up, if you want to just do a couple of minutes on what that's like when you first started and how you got into the industry. And, because you've chosen the people you've worked with, and you've selected them because of their skills. And it's, what do you look for in people when you're crewing up?
When I'm crewing up, I look for people that are willing to go that extra mile and also be nice to their co-workers. I think having a team that works well together is, in this world we're in at the moment, is essential. And I think it comes over on screen when you've got talented people that are nice people to boot. And everyone pulls together to get a product at the end. It's much better. And we've been honing a team for a while now, and this team that did Dracula, like I said, it was over 3 years ago that we're doing this, and we've only just finished another job now a month ago, all together, the same people. So we try and keep these people, and we also try and do on a regular basis work placements for at least 2 to 3 weeks for people to come and have a little bit of a taste of being on the floor and the office, bit of everything. And then we remember these people then when we need dailies or need people to come in. And if they make the most of that little opportunity they get, and that we remember them, then they'll be the ones we ring. And we've been very lucky in getting some good people that way, and they're still with us.
Yeah, I think that's very true, isn't it? And it's great, isn't it, when you have all of you together and you find people that you like and understand you and you get on with, and
you can trust them. Then there's trust. You can just that something's getting dealt with and getting dealt with well, and there's no issues.
Yes, yeah, that's absolutely true. I'd just like to thank everybody who has tuned in to see this evening, because we are going to be winding down now. And I hope that you got something from this. I know I did. I loved watching it, and it was very exciting. Nosferatu still scares me, though. But I thought it was great, and all your work was terrific, and it was really great of you all to come this evening and to do this, because I know you're all so busy. But I'd like to thank you very much for that. And I'm going to say goodnight from everybody to everyone who's watching. And please, anybody who's watching who's not a member of the British Film Designers Guild, we would like you. We'd love to get more membership, and we welcome great talent. So please enjoy rewatching this. Actually, I'd say watch it again. I might watch it again myself to see if I said anything silly. But thank you all very much, and I'm going to say goodnight to you all.
Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you so much.